Okay, we are live, and I am here with brother Adnan Jahangir, the brother who is famous for causing Zakir Naik to storm off stage, the brother who is famous for schooling Zakir Naik on evolution, the fact of evolution, the brother who's had over 4 million views, somewhere between 4 to 5 million views. And, first and foremost, Adnan, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your bravery and for your courage, both now and in the past. While you're in the Middle East, you got to face Zakir Naik, an opportunity that a lot of people would do a lot of things for, travel and pay money for, including, yours truly. I know a lot of people personally who would love to have had the opportunity that you had. And so we're going to get into your experience a little bit. We're going to get into the fact of evolution a little bit and go from there. But the first question that, a lot of people have been asking is, are you safe? Are you safe in the Middle East?
All right. First of all, thank you for having me on this, Farhan, and thank you really. And I'm safe. Don't worry. I'm all right. You know,
Good, good, good.
um, there's nothing wrong with me, and there's no threat to my life. I've had lots of
Hmm.
ups and downs here, friends leaving, and some tough times. But all in all, I'm all right, and I'll say I'm better off coming out of that whole experience than I was before. So yeah,
Beautiful. And what about
sure.
family and stuff like that? Is everything okay on that end, or?
Uh, I'm one of the lucky ones, I have to say, that my family have been so supportive and accepting of who I am, and across all, even in Pakistan, because I'm from Pakistan, and when I go back, my family recognizes that I hold different viewpoints, and they respect it, and I'm 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 very lucky in that aspect that I have such understanding and supportive parents and cousins, and you know I'm very lucky.
That's always refreshing to hear. I know that there's a lot of people out in the public in general who worry about apostates, particularly those who leave Islam and are in the Middle East, and you happen to be in the Middle East. And then when you're not in the Middle East, you're in Pakistan. And so both of those countries, or the country that you're in Pakistan as well, there's always this worry that if you say something against Islam, that your life is in danger. So it's always good to know that people are safe, and and
Right.
hopefully will remain safe, and don't be too
Sure.
controversial out there. I would hope, and yeah. And so that being said, let's go ahead and get into uh, the whole situation with Zakir Naik. You were at a live broadcast where you got to ask a question. What was the whole setup like? How did you get selected to be able to ask a question? And then what were you like when you were chosen to be one of the individuals who got to ask him a question?
Well, okay. So first of all, I'm a medical student who doesn't live in Dubai. I was born here and I've lived here my whole life, but I had the opportunity to go to Europe to study, and that's where I normally was. That's where I am. And even now, it's summer vacation, so I'm here in Dubai again. But normally, I'm in Hungary, or I'm planning on transferring, but that's another story. So I was back for vacations, and it was Ramadan, and I was at home. Just I had no idea I'd be meeting this man, and I was just home with my family, and I get a call from my friend, and he's like, "Just come downstairs. Come on, let's go." I'm like, "Where?" He's like, "Stop asking questions. Just let's go." And halfway over there, when finally we're in the parking lot, and he's like, "Okay, so you always trouble us with such questions. How about we've got a chance that this is a talk that Zakir Naik is holding, and how about you just pester him a bit too?" And I'm like, all right, I wasn't prepared, but I had an idea about what I would ask him. And honestly, I didn't know what I would ask him until I got up on the mic and I started talking. So after he actually held a wonderful talk, and he was talking about how Assalamu alaikum is one of the best greetings, and I happen to agree with him in some points. It means peace on you, and it's not bad, and I still use it from day to day. And so what they asked when there's a long line of people just And then they asked, is there a non-Muslim over there? And I was like, yeah, me. So they just pushed me over to the front, and so,
That's
and
another
then
thing that
Zakir.
I think that's another thing that you and I have in common. You know, having left Islam, we're not out here to insult and offend and attack and somehow be completely negative towards what we left behind. We've been through it. Our families were grown up into it. They tried to pass it down to us. We looked at it and decided that it wasn't for us. And that is like I said before, a brave thing to do. And it takes a lot of courage to be able to switch from what your family is trying to instill you with. And so, okay, so that being said, so your friend takes you. They give you the opportunity to ask a question. You weren't sure what you're going to ask, and then you get up there, and now you're face to face with one of the most well-known charlatans, if I can use that word, in the world. And I use charlatan in the context that this is a man who often does not know what he's talking about, and this is a clear situation where he did not know what he was talking about, and he pretends like he does, and he spews this information with rhetoric, with memorization, getting the crowd riled up. You saw everybody was clapping the whole time. I had like, what are you guys listening to? Right? So was it intimidating, like being around all of those Muslims who were clapping and cheering on Zakir Naik?
Well, I've seen the video, and you can hear people clapping, but I'll tell you, Farhan, when you're there, it sounded deafening. I couldn't hear myself think.
Wow.
It was just 10 times louder when you were there, and I just tried to be respectful. I was genuinely curious, and I thought this man, knowing I grew up with this man, when I was a Muslim, and I always had doubts. I would go up on YouTube videos and look at what this man had to say, and I came from that side that he's a doctor, and as a medical professional, he can answer such questions. And unfortunately, he just went on he used such tactics as I wasn't prepared for, and unfortunately, he didn't.
Okay, and so
in the same level of.
Okay, so before we get into your questions and Zakir Naik's response, let's go ahead and fast forward. You've asked the questions now. Zakir Naik storms off. He doesn't finish the conversation, which is one of the reasons why it's awesome to have you on right now, is because it felt like so much unfinished business was left in your questioning and his answer. And so I thought I would give you the opportunity to sort of finish up your thoughts on the whole scenario. But in terms of after the question was asked, what was the atmosphere like then? Were there Muslims that were hostile towards you, or did everybody just kind of move on like, okay, next question, whatever?
All right, so after they said that my question wasn't worth asking, and I was walking back, I just felt all eyes on me, and I tried to just tell myself, Adnan, keep your head held up high, and that you have nothing to be ashamed of. And I just walked with that confidence, and I went and sat in my seat. And afterwards, a few of his associates came, and they told me, we understand that Dr. Zakir Naik's explanation wasn't a suitable answer for you. So what we're going to do is after the talk, you can have a one-on-one with Dr. Zakir Naik, and if you're willing to wait for an hour or 2 hours, ask him certain questions, and you can clear your doubts. And I was really excited because I'll tell you a few things, and I'll discuss this later. There were certain things that I wanted to talk about that I just remembered. You know how you think when you're lying in bed and you're like, oh, I wish I could have asked him that. I wish I could have asked him that. I was just sitting there and I was thinking, I was like, all right, and maybe he was just pandering to the audience, and maybe one-on-one he'll be more frank. And so I waited an hour and a half, 2 hours, after which the same people come up to me and they're like, I'm sorry, you can't have this anymore. Dr. Zakir Naik has left for dinner with some sheikh, and hours of my life was wasted there. So.
Wow. Were you the only one who was selected to be able to meet and talk with him, or because you weren't satisfied?
There was another girl. a Christian girl who was converted to Islam in the talk, and I think she was also scheduled to meet Dr. Zakir Naik, and I don't think she met him either. So it was
Okay.
just the two of us, and my friends were sitting there, and the associates. We waited, but then you can only wait for so much.
Yeah, and I definitely commend you. You know, when Zakir Naik was trying to get a little bit more aggressive, you definitely held your chin high, and you remained confident, even though the crowd and himself started to, try to make it look like you were the one who was asking a foolish question. And so, definitely, I commend you for that. And okay, so that being said, this is how it ended. He storms off stage. The others approach you that you're going to be able to ask a question. What about the crowd? Was anybody eyeing you or looking at you weird? Did you feel like did anybody look at you like you're an ex-Muslim, like or any of that?
Well, let me give you two stories. While I was walking back, there was this man. I remember this so distinctly. There was this man that shouted, theory manner. And again, I didn't look at him. I just walked straight ahead. But while I was waiting, there was this Muslim man. He just came up to me and said, I'm impressed with what you said, and uh, well done, lad. And that's what he said. And both sides of the coin. There was this another, so I'm
For
okay.
sure.
I'm okay with that.
So
Right.
here we
So
have another Muslim coming up to you, telling you, well said, good question, and actually commended you. So exactly, that's like one of my big things too. Like, not all Muslims. This is not like you can't just blame all people or look at all people as the same. And you definitely have that heart space and that mind space to be able to understand that. And I do appreciate you. So a Muslim came up to you and said, good job. And then there was another person who walked by you and said, theory. Well, what did he yell out?
while I was walking back to my seat after I finished my question, so everyone was looking at me, and I remember this guy just shouted theory, and he was such a demeaning manner that made me feel horrible. And I just held my chin high and I walked straight forward. And
Okay.
they're humans. You get all types of people from everywhere. You shouldn't bulk up. Just like you said.
For sure.
So
We're completely on the same page with regards to that. They are human. Everybody has their views and their beliefs that they're passionate about. And you can imagine, somebody who holds Islam as their identity. That's who they are. That's what they're passionate about, and that's what keeps them going in life. And then for somebody to challenge that, naturally, you're gonna get upset. But for the most part, what we're finding out here, this is a brother who is in the Middle East. You're in this scenario. You got to ask your question on television. You got to continue to live your life. There was a huge crowd there. Nobody bothered you. The Zakir Naik people tried to get you to talk to him, but he didn't want to talk to you. And here we are today, talking about this several years later. How long ago was this?
I'll say about this was when I was in first year, first semester. So I'd say 2 years ago, 2.5, three almost.
Okay, okay. And so, so after that, this comes out on YouTube and it starts to explode. There, 3 million views here, another million views there, several hundred thousands of views after other people uploaded it. So, somewhere between 4 to 5 million views overall. And which means that a lot of people were impressed by your questioning, the way that you answered the way that you handled the question, your maturity, how nice you were, and on top of that, the content that you brought forward in the conversation with regards to evolution. We're about to get into that in a moment. But how do you feel about the response that you've gotten? Do you ever go back and see what comments that video, some of the comments in those videos? Like, what's that whole experience like?
Well, let me tell you this. So I had no idea it was recorded, and as in I knew this was for Peace TV probably, and they'll upload it's just going to be on TV, and then no one's going to watch it. I had no idea someone's going to upload it to YouTube, and for a long time I had no idea the video was there. And I think when it was past the million mark, I had a friend who texted me, is that Adnan, I watched your video, you're very brave, and like I have to commend you, all of this. And it was an old schoolmate. And I'm just, what are you talking about? I have no idea. I just moved on with my life and I completely forgotten about it. sent me a link, and I couldn't believe there were so many people who've seen that video. And the whole time before that video, not many people commented. Like there was that Muslim guy and a few friends of mine, but there was more opposition and there was more, negative reaction to what I said. I had a friend, and had a friend who told me that if he could get away with it, he would kill me. And this was a person I grew up with,
Wow.
and it was just awful hearing that.
So you
But
get to see the other side
after
of the spectrum now. Somebody comes up and says, "You good job, good question," a Muslim, and then another Muslim that if I could, I would kill you. I guess we have both sides of the story being told here, huh?
And his brother is totally cool with me. He's a good friend of mine. It just goes on to show, you never know.
So this guy that does he still feel that way? Does he still hate you to that extent, or?
I have no idea.
Good, yeah. Better not to. I mean, if he doesn't like you, better not to stay in contact or even entertain that kind of drama. Beautiful. So,
Right.
so now okay. So you see the video, it has over 1 million views, all these different comments, a lot of negative comments, probably mostly from Muslims, right?
No, I had no idea that there was so much support, and I was so touched. Oh my God, like it was amazing, just knowing there's so many people from all over the world agreeing with me. For a long time I didn't feel, I was kind of ashamed that I went up there, because even though I was proud of myself for asking that question and holding my nerve, it was like, why did I do that? It just, how does this help anyone? And after that, I heard so many good, responses and motivating comments, and it was really touching. There are wonderful people out there.
I mean, you've
It's
definitely
people like you.
inspired a lot of people. To me, to be honest with you, it's my favorite Zakir Naik question of all time. And I'm doing a documentary on Zakir Naik, as I've told you, when you're going to be a part of that documentary to some degree with regards to the interview and talking about that particular incident again. But that's going to be a little bit more professional. But given I've seen a lot of Zakir Naik videos over the years, and that was definitely my favorite. I mean, I saw it a couple of years ago, probably like 2 years ago when it first came out. I was like, this is the best question that Zakir Naik has ever gotten. And on top of that, I mean, by question, I mean when you got to actually come in and do the rebuttal to the nonsense that Zakir Naik was spewing about evolution. And so, yeah, man, it was the first time where somebody actually got to ask Zakir Naik, let alone a Muslim or a Christian, about the fact of evolution and how it works. And it's just wonderful. And I know a lot of people have benefited from this video. This video is going to continue to be a part of the Zakir Naik narrative. And clearly it's a part of your narrative. I'm sure it's a memory that you will always go back to. So,
It's great to be a part of it.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into the evolution and the whole question and everything. He didn't answer the part about apostasy, because most of the time that was occupied with talking about evolution. Now Zakir Naik does something that is so annoying, and I myself being in the field of psychology, I get a similar response when I bring up psychology. Automatically, for some reason, and it's so annoying, people automatically go and start thinking about Sigmund Freud, right? Oh, the id, ego, and superego. No, there's been a ton of research, scientific, laboratory experiments, surveys that have been done since Sigmund Freud. Freud is not psychology. His theories are not the foundation of psychology. He was simply the one who initiated some important questions and some important research. Freud is not psychology. The id, ego, and superego is not real psychology. Now, don't get me wrong. I love Freud. I love his contemporary Carl Jung. I even appreciate those theories, but they're not the science of psychology. And likewise, Zakir Naik did the same thing with Charles Darwin and the fact of evolution by trying to go back. He tried to make it like it was a religion, where you go back to the scripture or the prophet to see what he said. And that's not the way that science works. So him going back to Charles Darwin is what is my biggest problem. And you spoke to that. And when the moment you spoke to that, I was so happy. Do you think you could touch on that a little?
Well, only narrative he could take and still appease his audience. I think that's why he took it. To talk about it in a condensed manner, hoping that the other person doesn't have enough knowledge of the subject. See, you can explain anything to anyone if you don't know what it is.
Right.
So I think he tried to just, first of all, he said, I think I remember he said the island of Calotropis is where Charles Darwin went. And that was just, it's the Galapagos Islands. And at that point, I knew this guy, he's just going to maneuver around and he's not going to answer my question fairly. And I was disillusioned at that point,
Right. And that's important. And it's important because now everybody on YouTube and in the world can see how he dodged the question, right? It's important for people to see how these charlatans dodge questions rather than dealing with the scientific facts. And the fact that that happened with you, I think was a good thing. And that's one of the reasons why the video exploded so much, is because of how bad his answer was and how good your response was. And so you came on and said, over the last 150 years, there has been a ton of research that's been done. You brought about the argument from the common cold and how adaptations have occurred over time, and how the common cold has morphed along the way to deal with some of our vaccines, which he didn't deal with. He just right. And so before I jump into the next part, go ahead and touch on that a little bit.
See, I was always regretted, that I brought up the theory of gravity and not something related to biology, so I could really. So I was thinking that this guy, he used semantics to dodge the question, saying that in science, it means different to what it means in everyday use. And for most people, they learn in school, it's somewhere between complete certainty and hypothesis, somewhere in middle, just below law. And that's what he played at. And I just wanted to ask, I really wanted to ask this question, and I regret not doing it not thinking about it at that point. Then, sir, what about cell theory or germ theory? You as a medical professional, you're not going to tell me that cells, because it's not, as far as I know, and I know my knowledge is not as much as yours, that as far as I know, there is no such thing as a cell law. I just know there's a cell theory. And I really wish I could have asked him that.
Oh, the whole hypothesis. The whole hypothesis theory thing was absolutely ridiculous. I was surprised that somebody who went to school and became a medical doctor went that route. First of all, in any medical school that I've looked at, what I understand is that evolution is understood to be a scientific fact. It's not a hypothesis. What we understand a theory to be is the explanation of the mechanism. This is, okay, so when he said the theory of heart pumping. Yes, there's a theory of heart pumping. This is how it happens. This is the description of the mechanisms, and this is the theory of heart pumping. The theory of heart pumping does not take away the fact that, or the law that the heart pumps blood, right? Same thing with gravity. These are the mechanisms. These are the constants. This is physics and cosmology. This is the theory of gravity, right? And you can read about the theory, understand how it works, and that's the theory of gravity. And then there's the fact of gravity, or the law of gravity. And the same thing with biological evolution. There's the law of evolution, and then there's a theory that is constructed to point at evolution as a fact, which it does in no uncertain terms. And I've actually had a debate on evolution. For those of you who want to, you can check that debate out with Bill Morgan, where I've gone over a lot of this evidence for the fact of evolution that these people seemingly ignore. But that whole theory thing was just ridiculous. The whole hypothesis thing was ridiculous. This is the law of evolution.
See, you can argue for Zakir Naik saying that, okay, so what is the difference in science between a theory and a law? Yeah. So you could say a law has a has a mathematical equation to it, and something like the theory of evolution does not, and that's why it's called law. But there is no such thing or any inference that a theory is any less than a law. It's an observation fact that can be observed and tested multiply by proven hypothesis. That's what a theory is. And you just maneuvered it around, and I just really hope I could have asked,
Mm. Yeah,
maybe
Richard
more.
Dawkins goes over this in his book, The Greatest Show on Earth. This whole issue of theory versus facts, and he uses this argument about the heliocentric theory, that it's not just a theory but it's a fact. I mean, we've had academicians and individuals who've been studying them have had these conversations already, so there's no question about this, right? But unfortunately, Zakir Naik goes up there and spews some of the most ridiculous rhetoric possible and embarrasses himself, and the Muslim community should be thoroughly embarrassed by his answer. If you value science, if you value truth, and you value a representation of truth, then what Zakir Naik did was absolutely absolutely embarrassing, to say the least, from an academic standpoint. So that being said, let me go ahead and ask you, what are some of the main arguments that you would use to find evolution as a clear-cut fact of reality, or convincing?
I would say the abundant fossil record and microbiology and findings in paleontology. You can't disprove that. And it just, a whole field of biology exists because evolution is true. It would not exist if there was no evolution. So I think the evidence is abundantly clear. And
yeah, there's no question about it. There's like no question about it. Evolution is a fact. All of the evidence points towards it. The understanding of DNA, the understanding of microevolution, why we have different races within the species, why we have different types of cats and dogs, why we have different types of, different species within species. That's microevolution. And then we understand that what has caused this microevolution is the same mechanism that has brought about macroevolution, or a change in phenotype and genotype, to the extent that a new organism on a macro scale develops. We understand this at the level of DNA. We understand that how DNA, and the thing is, there's so much evidence, like where to start. Not only can you look at DNA in terms of microevolution and macroevolution, you can also look at the phylogenetic tree and see how all species, all biological organisms, are interrelated and have a common ancestry. And the fossil record and paleontology, DNA research, the Human Genome Project. I mean, they're just endless facts that you cannot deny. And Zakir Naik just completely failed to acknowledge or address any of those facts with you. Okay, so with that being said, the last thing that we'll get into, unless you have any comments with regards to the evidence for evolution.
I think you said it best, so I'll just rest my case here.
We'll rest our case, right? Okay, so that being said, with regards to evolution, the last question that we'll get into is where are you now in terms of your worldview? How do you view reality? Is this just all matter and materialism, you live and die and that's it? Or is it possible that there's something more to reality?
Well, that is the difficult question right there, a much more challenging one. That I'm a spiritual person.
You kind of cut off there.
I like to think that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can.
So, I said that's a much more challenging question to answer because, see, I like to think that I'm a spiritual person, and I like to differentiate spirituality and religion and faith, and you don't need to be um, religious to be spiritual. And I'm also in awe when I think about our place in the universe. And this time, more pragmatically, I believe that you live, you die, and people very close to me would be disagree with me. And I have one person who always tries to convince me that the universe cares about you, and there is a master plan. And bless her heart, I wish it was true, but I would be
No,
lying to
I
myself.
get it. Philosophical idealism is one way to look at it. For me personally, like you said, spirituality, the experience of life and the meaning that we find in the experiences that we're having, I think is very important and relevant. There are things that we don't have answers to, just like you said in the Zakir Naik interview or the questioning, that there are things that we don't know of and that we should keep an open mind with regards to some of these things. Um, and that's, I think that's the best way to go about it. So I mean, I appreciate you being here and answering my questions and talking about this uh, with me, and I know that the audience has thoroughly enjoyed this as much as I have.
I
And
hope so.
hopefully we can have you on again in the future, but definitely for sure we're going to have you in the documentary exposing Zakir Naik. Thank you again for all of your courage, for your open-mindedness, and may you be the best doctor that you can be, and we see you helping
Very much,
people
Farhan.
for
Thank
years to come. Thank you very much,
you. Sure.
and peace be with you.
You too, Farhan.